Hello everyone, I'm Lloyd Barwick and this is Gin Opinion. And we're here today at the Trevethan Distillery in Saltash, am I right John? Saltash?
Yes, yeah. In sunny Saltash.
In Cornwall. And we're with John Hall, the head distiller, John, here?
I'm the only distiller, but I like to think I'm the head distiller as well, yeah.
Okay.
I'm my own boss.
Okay, right, well thanks this morning John for having us and giving up your
welcome.
time. And we've had a quick look around the distillery, which is very, very impressive. And we're standing here by one of your stills.
Yep.
Which is...
This is Rose.
Rose.
Yeah.
And she's a Portuguese alembic copper pot still. And you have a second one in the corner, which I believe was your very first production still.
Yep.
And she's called Doris?
Doris, yeah.
Doris.
Named after my gran.
After your grandmother, exactly. So two fantastic names for these wonderful machines. And we've got behind Sally on the camera, we've got another little 20 litre?
That's a 30 litre
30 litre, bubbling away, producing a development brew.
I can't tell you actually. It's not a gin, but it's our new secret recipe.
Very interesting indeed.
Soon to hit the shelves.
Right, so thanks for giving up your time this morning. And I suppose the first question is Trevethan Gin. How did it get established and how long have you been producing gin?
So I've been making gin for about 6 years now. We launched the business 4 years ago, and it was all on the back of some conversations with my business partner at the time. He told me a story about his granddad, Norman Trevethan, who back in the 20s used to make a kind of bootleg compound gin, I guess, or bathtub gin. I'd been working with Rob in the food industry for about 6 years already. We've been building food factories and drink factories for other people. And I thought, why not give this a go for ourselves? So I'm a chemist by trade, and I had a fairly good background knowledge of distillation in general, and I was a bit of a whiskey buff at the time, so I thought I knew what I was talking about. So I gave it a go, and that's essentially how it started. We started very small on a little 1 litre still, scaled it up to Doris, who's 300 litres. And the first couple of years was quite organic. We were doing it as a bit of a sideline and bit of enjoyment, and it just snowballed really. And now we're running 200-300 litre stills 3 times a week and barely keeping up with production.
Yeah, it's certainly a busy place, and we can see there are a couple of girls next door doing the goods out and packing the bottles, and it's a busy distillery. So it's great, and we love the gin. Now, you told me your Trevethan dry gin was originally a bootleg gin that your the
Rob's
original
granddad.
Mr. Trevethan made, and you've turned it into a classic London dry. And we love it. We have it in the shop. It's a really good London dry gin. So in terms of botanical mix, I'm assuming standard basket of London botanicals with cardamom, coriander, etc.
So we start, basically there's 10 botanicals across 3 flavour profiles. What we wanted to do was make something that started as a really good classic London dry. So you're correct, you've got 5 London dry botanicals, which is juniper, coriander, angelica and cassia, 4. And then what we wanted to do was basically, from a London dry perspective and from my personal perspective, it was all about the juniper. It was about balancing the different flavours of juniper through the gin itself. So juniper will start quite earthy and quite deep, and then as it goes through the taste it will get lighter and more piney. So we wanted to pair that with botanicals that worked. Now Norman gave us a compound recipe of botanicals he used to use with hand-picked elderflower and gorse flower, and it was really about trying to get the balance of those right, so that nothing overpowered the juniper and nothing kind of detracted from the juniper, and the dry flavour and the classic London flavour came through.
Fantastic. And I believe that you still forage your gorse flowers and your elderflowers, which are one of the flavour profiles in the gin. Yeah,
so we picked those at my wife's dairy farm actually. Her mum and dad have been dairy farmers in Cornwall for, forever, I think, 3 generations now. So I say we handpick most of the botanicals. It's mainly Carly's mum that goes out and does a lot of the picking for us, which we're very grateful for. And we dry them, and usually we can make a harvest last 12 months. So yeah, it's all hands to the pump around April to June, and then
the picking season.
And get it dried and get it ready. Right. We're lucky with gorse though, because it flowers twice a year. So yeah, we've got a bit of extra window.
So that's your London dry, and you cut that back to 42%.
43.
43%. That's right. Which is just perfect for a good gin. I think it's great.
And as I said to you, sort of in the build up to this, for us, it's about the perfect balance between the flavour and it being a really good, crisp, clear gin as well. 43% was the perfect point.
Fantastic. So the second gin on the recipe today, if you like, would be your honey oak.
Yes.
Now we love honey oak. It's a proper gin with a very subtle but beautiful honey flavour in it. So tell us the process to get the honey in the gin.
Yeah, it's kind of a two-pronged approach. The first part is all about what we do with the oak. So it came about through just conversations with my in-laws. They had an oak tree come down in the winter. They were chopping up for firewood. I said, let me take some of that away and play with it. What I wanted to look at, when I was looking into the aging of spirits, a lot of the flavour from anything you put in a barrel comes from what it's been holding previously. So a lot of oak-aged gins will either be ex-whiskey or ex-bourbon, and they come out tasting a bit whiskey and bourbon-esque. So I wanted to give that oak depth, but then add a sort of a hint of sweetness and see what else would seep into that wood and generate that sweetness. So I played around with honey and found that actually, if you leave it within the wood for maybe two weeks, you're not just adding straight honey to the gin. What you're doing is just that hint of sweetness and sugar that glazes around the oak, then goes into the gin, and then you age that for maybe 6 weeks, and you get the depth of the oak and the colour, but just like you say, just a hint of honey, and it isn't that overly sweet kind of distinct honey flavour. It's just right on the end of the taste. When the juniper's getting it is most piney and light, you just get that hint of sweetness.
That's a perfect description of how it tastes. That's exactly how it tastes to us. So that's honey oak. The next gin is now dare I call it a Navy strength, because it's your chauffeur's reserve. And I know it harks back to the original Mr. Trevethan, who was a chauffeur.
Yeah, he was.
But it is at that Navy strength, isn't it? It's a 57%.
So we do call it a Navy strength, because obviously the classic 100 proof is around 57 to 58% ABV. The reason we created that one, we wanted to really show off the botanical recipe that Norman had given us. And the London Dry does that, but you've also got certain, not restrictions, but there's certain rules you abide by within a London Dry recipe to make sure it is true to the London Dry essence. And we wanted to push that to the max with flavour when we did the Navy strength, and we had a bit more ability to do that. So we increase all the botanicals by about 30%, which just gives everything that sort of supercharged effect. And the reason we wanted to do it at the Navy strength was because, as I said before, the amount of oil we extract is really high. If we took it much lower than that, you would get that louching because we've got so much flavour in there. But in the same token, it means it can stand up to being at 57%. It doesn't just have this harsh alcohol flavour. It's got that smoothness, that, something we think is quite bespoke to our gin is that mouthfeel and that texture as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a great gin. We do in the shop. We have gin discovery evenings. We always put a Navy strength on, and whenever that Navy strength is Trevethan, everybody loves it. It's the gin of the evening because it does have that super soft, thick mouthfeel. It's got a long finish. It's very oily and doesn't have that spirit burn. It's very well blended and it's a beautiful gin, isn't it?
Yeah, and I
think so.
I think people, they hear 57% and Navy strength and they can be a little bit sort of cautious, but actually it's you would only maybe have one or two of them in an evening rather than a few, but it's about that flavour and about really celebrating the flavour of the botanicals.
So the last gin, Trevethan gin we have in the shop is your grapefruit and lychee. Yeah. Now that's for your fruit lovers, and and it's a mix that wouldn't normally sort of come to mind. Lychee, pink grapefruit for sure, but lychee. So what brought that recipe about then?
It was a friend of mine actually. She had been working in the south of France for a number of years, working on boats and things out there, and she said to me one day that whenever she orders a gin and tonic in the south of France, they always put lychees in it. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I've never thought of that as a botanical. So I played around with, got some lychees in, tasted them, just did a few steeps in alcohol just to see what flavour they imparted. It was quite sweet, and I felt that just using the lychees might probably be a little bit too sweet, so I added the grapefruit in. I looked at different citrus fruits really just to balance that, just to give it that little bit of tartness and bitterness as well. But it's made slightly differently to the London Dries in that it starts as a London Dry and grapefruit and lychee go into the still and it comes out as a standard London Dry. But on our smaller 30-litre still, we then make a concentrated essence of just grapefruit and lychees together.
Ah, that's how it's done.
So, and then that gets added. So technically that would be called a compound gin or distilled gin.
Yeah, but fully distilled.
It's fully distilled, but it's not a London Dry. Sure. It's kind of a hybrid.
And it works really well, doesn't it? Because obviously it's based on a beautiful London Dry, and the grapefruit and lychee again are fully distilled, so they're not syrups added afterwards. No. They're a distillate added, and
one that we make here ourselves as well. So it's all done in house, which I think is really important from a flavour point of view.
And we're now, when we finish here, we're off to back to your office to taste your fruit gins, which you're now creating. So. How many fruit gins do you have now?
We've got 3.
Okay.
We produce those for a distributor of ours. It was something I'd steered away from in my early gin days, but I think the market wanted something, and I could see that the fruit gin market was growing, and I just felt that there was probably a lack of quality in some of the fruit products that were coming out, and I wanted to produce something. I wanted to show that you can make a fruit gin with the principles in the way that London Dry is made as well, and with that high level of quality. So we use a combination of fresh fruit and some fruit juice from the fruit as well. It starts as a London Dry, so it's essentially a slightly toned down version of our original London Dry, and then the fruit is steeped in the spirit afterwards. But that's essentially, I mean, with the lemon, all we're doing really is steeping lemon peel in it afterwards. It's really simple, but it just adds that colour and that zest and gives it an extra dimension, a bit like the honey oak. That makes sense.
Fantastic. Well, we're really looking forward to tasting them, and we'll have them on the shelf in the shop very soon. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having a chat. It's been great to look around the distillery, and we still love Trevethan Gin. Oh, the other thing I should mention, of course, are your bottles. You have the most outstanding bottles. They are Art Deco in style and shape. Where did they come from? Where was the inspiration for your bottles?
So it really harks back to Normal again in the 1920s. We wanted something that really screamed Art Deco, 1920s, 1930s decor, if that makes sense. And we looked at a number of bottles. When we saw that one, it was almost unanimous that had to be the one. And we do like the fact it's got nice broad shoulders, so it pushes other bottles off the shelf. It
does. It looks great on the shelf, and we have people who absolutely love it. And if you're looking for Trevethan Gin, look for an Art Deco bottle that absolutely jumps out at you. They're fantastic things. So thanks once again, John. We'll have a little taste of your fruit gins now, and we hope to come back and see you again one day.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.